Please welcome to the stage Morgan Brennan from CNBC, the Honorable Christopher Landau of the United States Department of State, and François Poirier of TC Energy.
Gentlemen, nice to see you. It's great to be on stage with you today. Have a seat. We have a lot to get into. Excited for this conversation. Let's just jump right into it. Deputy Secretary, how are you thinking about energy security, how it intersects with national security, how it intersects with diplomacy right now?
Energy security is inseparable from national security. And that's really my message here today, that we view energy as one of the key components, not only of our domestic economy, but of our position in the world. Because without energy, there can be no economic growth, either for us or for other countries. And so, if there's one message I'd like to get across today, it is that the United States is open for business with respect to energy around the world. And we look forward to selling energy abroad. I think President Trump has made that absolutely clear. When I was looking at this job last year, and I was thinking about what might be a Trump administration foreign policy, we listed energy right up there among the top three objectives of the administration. And so what
are the other three? Or the other two, I should say.
Well, I mean, sovereignty, protecting our own national sovereignty, and military readiness, and energy. I mean, again, without energy, you really don't have an economy. And so anyway, I'm delighted to be here today to get a chance to just really underscore how important energy is to our worldwide foreign policy.
You said America's open for business. How are you thinking about that as one of the largest natural gas infrastructure players in North America?
Well, we have $8.5 billion of capital committed to spend in the U.S. over the next 5 years. I would say in terms of the next 5 and 10 beyond that, the overwhelming majority of our capital will be going into the U.S. We're very supportive of the president's energy dominance agenda. And as you pointed out, it begins and ends with energy. And I think natural gas, which is what our primary business is, will be the backbone of that energy growth agenda.
If I just take a step back for a moment, TC Energy, for folks that maybe don't realize how much you're handling when it comes to natural gas and what that means here in North America and potentially abroad.
So we are the only natural gas transmission company that's prominent in all three countries of North America. We move natural gas to all of the coasts of North America, to virtually all of the LNG facilities. We move about 30% of the natural gas around the continent. We supply 30% of the natural gas to U.S. LNG facilities on the Gulf Coast. And our expectation is that that will grow significantly. And of course, the AI race is on. I don't like the fact that in 2024, China put 9 times the amount of power generation in service than the United States did.
That's a huge number.
So my hope is pitter-patter.
How are you thinking about that, especially where that competition with China is concerned?
Well, it's interesting the point that he just made about AI. I had dinner a couple weeks ago with Sundar Pichai from Google and was asking him about how he sees the AI competition playing out over the course of the century, because that's going to be one of the defining challenges of the century. And he said that he thinks ultimately the race to dominance in AI will be won by the country that has the most reliable energy sources, because that's such an energy dependent endeavor. So it's interesting again when whenever you kind of scratch the surface, everything ultimately gets back to energy. And that is very, very clear to us. The president has unleashed energy domestically, has opened the door for more investment in energy in our country. And we're making energy a keystone of our foreign policy. I mean, just the deal announced with the European Union has massive sales of gas in particular to Europe. I think there are just incredible opportunities there for the United States that have been left unfulfilled for years.
And we are seeing that, right, in terms of the LNG piece of trade deals that are happening right now, investments back into the U.S., et cetera. I guess it raises the question, and I'll put this to both of you, but I'll start with you, Deputy Secretary. Are we pulling enough molecules out of the ground to be able to send this abroad and service our own needs here stateside?
Well, you're right. These two things go together, right? I mean, part of it is finding the markets, and then also you have to have the molecules. And I think the Trump administration is committed to both. That we are trying to cut a lot of the red tape that has held up energy production in our country for a long time. Certainly, from the executive branch point of view, we are trying to streamline all of those procedures, approvals. Hopefully we can cut through some of the court processes and things that have held these kind of things up. But as a country, we got to get serious about this, because this is, again, the basis for prosperity. You can't have economic growth and development unless you have energy and infrastructure, those two things. And if you're in the energy and infrastructure business, I mean, you know that better than anybody.
Well, this is the most energy literate administration in the United States in many, many decades. And so they understand the importance of faster permitting and simpler regulations to allow the infrastructure to be built faster. I think the natural gas is there. The reserves are there for a century or more based on current consumption. So the bottleneck is on the infrastructure side. And for the first time in a very long time, we have an administration that is listening to us around what are the practical ways in which we can accelerate development for the betterment of the country and the security of the world.
So when you talk about investing billions of dollars over the next 5 to 10 years, most of it here in the U.S.,
yes.
How quickly can you build out and stand up that infrastructure, and where is it going to go specifically?
So right now it's about 5 years from the time you file a permit to you have an asset in service, and I think we could do it in half the time. If you look at the history of developing and building projects in the United States, that is definitely possible. And where is it going? Everywhere. What's interesting is as data center developers get more energy literate, the conversations we used to have with them were, here's where we're going to locate our data center. How are you going to get energy to us? And now that's evolved to, where do we need to locate our data center in order to get energy from you? Because permitting is challenging, and also the competition is fierce for a finite amount of supply.
But let me just underscore one thing, that we in the State Department view it as critical to our job in this administration to be expanding markets for American energy around the world. I mean, this is part of an overall effort to heighten the importance in American foreign policy of economic and commercial matters. And you can't really start talking about that subject without talking about energy, because it's such an important part of our economy. And so when we're talking with different countries, Japan, Korea, Europe, obviously, energy is very much on the agenda. It's something that is at the top of mind for us. Please, where are you guys on buying energy? And I think we're finding people are very open to this around the world. The United States, we're blessed with abundant energy resources. And so we are now, again, making that just a cornerstone of our foreign policy.
How does this play out with Russia specifically, especially as there has been talk of another package of sanctions being put in place, maybe more targeted towards energy?
Look, our relationship with Russia has been challenging. I think, the president has made it very clear that he wants to bring peace to Ukraine, and we have, extended a hand of friendship to Russia. I think it is also clear if Russia is not responsive to that outstretched hand, that there will be, further consequences. We're going down a path of further sanctions. I hope we don't have to go there. I think the president, again, is extremely sincere in his desire for peace. Every time I've been with him in the Oval Office, he talks about the terrible tragedy that, while we've been talking, another, hundreds and thousands of people have died. So, he is absolutely, his number one goal with respect to our relationship with Russia is to try to, bring an end to that conflict. But again, I think we just have to understand that it is certainly possible, if the Russians don't come to the table, that the sanctions regime will continue, and again, that could have certainly benefits for expanding American energy markets in places where Russia had been a dominant force.
Thoughts, or I guess ways that we should be understanding some of these reports about recent airspace incursions by Russia, Russian drones, aircraft into NATO allied space?
I think that's still a pretty developing situation. It's not clear that these were intentional or not. Again, I don't want to be jumping to conclusions on something that dramatic and far-reaching. So we're trying to take a deep breath, not escalate things, because Russia's a great power, and we are looking hopefully to establish or get back to a normal relationship with Russia. It's been highly abnormal for these last few years, and we would, I think the world would be a better place. Energy markets would be calmer, I think, if this conflict were over. And then it's fine. We can compete on a level playing field, and they have things to sell. We have things to sell. That's the way the world should work.
And while diplomacy is playing itself out, I think there's also a strategy around making sure that the free and democratic world has access to natural gas from places other than Russia. And so when the governor of Alaska, for example, has an energy conference and President Trump attends, Vice President Vance attends, Secretary Rubio, Secretary Wright, Secretary Burgum, to help promote access to American LNG to Asia, it sends a very powerful message to us in the private sector about allocating capital to help do just that.
Will you be building out some of that infrastructure we've been hearing about in Alaska, pipelines?
Quite possibly, we'll see.
That sounds like a tease.
We will try to get you off-take agreements so that we can move forward with that project. I mean, again, that's been something we've been very focused on in the State Department, is making sure that we make feasible the kind of investments that are necessary for that by making sure that there are markets. And again, I think we have an amazing product to sell. I mean, it shouldn't be a hard sell, right? We have cheap and reliable energy. I mean, what more can you ask for? And it pains me sometimes when I see some countries, for instance, in Central America, that are prime for economic development. They've been plagued for years with substandard development. Well, if you actually kind of look underneath, you'll see that the problem is they don't have cheap and reliable energy. You can't build an economy without cheap and reliable energy. That's the foundation for economic growth. So we look forward. I mean, these countries are very close to Texas and other places with massive amounts of energy. We just need to get the infrastructure in place so that we have pipelines, LNG terminals, that infrastructure. Once you put that in, I think these places are prime for economic growth.
Agreed.
What does this mean from a U.S., because it's U.S., but it's also, when we think about, energy rich, Canada, Mexico, there's USMCA. I realize some of that's in the process of starting to get renegotiated or re-looked at, reviewed. Yeah. But what does that mean for TC Energy in terms of, how those pipelines are running, how that infrastructure is running, and how you can build it out to be more robust and take advantage of what the Deputy Secretary is talking about?
Well, generally speaking, energy wants to flow south. So there are parts of the U.S., particularly the Pacific Northwest, that are supplied from Canada because it's the closest basin. Also, the U.S. Gulf Coast and West Texas is supplying most of Mexico's natural gas needs. So, for example, it would be great to get Gulf Coast gas, U.S. Gulf Coast gas, off the west coast of the continent. And one option is to build an LNG facility in Mexico and build a pipeline from West Texas over to the west coast, and therefore grow markets for U.S. natural gas in Texas and also improve access to affordable and reliable energy in Asia. So collaboration between the three countries makes each of the countries individually more reliable. And also the amount of influence the continent can have globally around energy security is that much better with a collaborative environment.
And I imagine it gets sort of right at the heart of this notion of reindustrialization, onshoring, nearshoring. You were also, in the previous Trump administration, the ambassador to Mexico, so would love to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, well, in fact, I was very involved in the project that François just mentioned in terms of getting Mexican approval for the construction of a port in Mexico, in Baja California, to send LNG shipments to Asia coming from the United States. So the pipeline would come, across northern Mexico to a port. It's actually sad as an American that we can no longer have in our own country the ports that export these kind of things. I think California is just basically a lost cause with regulations and lawsuits. And I think people need to take a hard look in the mirror and say, is this the future we want of deindustrialization? Because that's what they have basically, that's what we're facing if we don't get serious about energy. So, I think the second best thing is to, avoid California by going to Mexico, but that means more jobs for Mexico, as well as for the United States. But it's sad that we've reached a point in the United States when, we are not able to take advantage of our own energy by exporting it. I think there is kind of, a problem that we have built up over the years. Our systems have become so bureaucratic and so sclerotic that we've become ossified in this regulatory state. It starts with noble intentions, right, to try to prevent bad things from happening, but at some point it ensures that bad things will happen if you have layer and layer of regulation and red tape. We just need to take a fresh look at that in our country. And unfortunately, we have the federal level, the state level. It's not so easy. From the federal government, we can do certain things, but there's certain things that are state and local authorities. But again, we're working well with Mexico to try to get this out. And if that's the second best solution, then having it in the United States, so be it. But again, I think when I was ambassador to Mexico, I used to say to the Mexicans, why don't we have better pipeline infrastructure from, you guys are sitting right next to Texas, which is flaring, energy right there, and you could have it very inexpensively if you just had the pipelines in place. And I think we made some progress, but not nearly enough.
Right. Well, on May 1st, we just put our Southeast Gateway project into service.
God bless you.
Which is to bring a BCF and a half a day of natural gas down to Tabasco in the southeast region of Mexico. But it could be double that, and then you could double it again.
But it's so crazy because the Mexicans at least talk so much about the importance of economic development in that southern part of Mexico.
Yes.
The reason that part of Mexico has been lagging behind in economic development is precisely because they don't have this cheap, reliable energy. So exactly what you're talking about, that is the catalyst for economic development down there, as well as in other parts of Central America. So people talk about, how do we address some of the underlying causes of migration, and we want to foster economic development elsewhere. You're not going to foster that just by more aid programs. We've been trying that for the last 60 years. A lot of that money gets siphoned off by local elites. The way you're going to be able to achieve that is precisely with these kinds of infrastructure projects that allow a foundation for real economic growth. And it makes me happy to hear that that's actually happening.
It's a key point. I want to go back to something you just said and springboard off of that, and that is the critics of energy infrastructure projects. They'll say either A, LNG exports are going to drive up the price of natural gas and make it more expensive for folks domestically, and B, we're open to a pipeline maybe, but there's safety concerns and I don't want it in my backyard.
Right.
So how do you answer this?
Well, you have to focus on the national interest. When you look at, first of all, pipelines are extremely safe. When you look at other modes of transportation of energy, our track record in the industry is getting better all the time, and it was excellent to begin with new technology, actually with AI as well as other things. The standards for environmental protection in North America are among the highest in the world. And so we're not very concerned about those types of impacts. And when you look at the benefits that natural gas brings to an economy in terms of affordability and reliability, and you can't ask the developing world to skip over fossil fuels to install weather-dependent forms of energy when they're trying to improve their quality of life. It's just as simple as that.
I think it's important to acknowledge that environmental concerns are legitimate. I mean, I think we all want to be good stewards of God's creation, and that's perfectly legitimate. But I think, that is not inconsistent with economic development that's managed responsibly. I mean, again, we do have a lot of laws and regulations to make sure that those environmental considerations are taken into account. I think what we have to avoid, though, is a situation where invoking environmental concerns becomes basically an excuse for pulling the plug on energy projects. I mean, I just think, there is a way to make this not a zero-sum game. And I think that is the key, again, where you recognize the environmental concerns, but you also recognize we want to live in a thriving economy. And every time we open our refrigerator or we turn on the air conditioning or the heat, we need energy to survive. So it's not really an optional thing. But I think that's why we have a government. That's why we have Congress that makes laws that assesses these trade-offs. But once these trade-offs have been assessed, what we can't do is then let the permitting process and we have to actually then make the system work. I think basically it's been gummed up for decades now, and I think we in the Trump administration are ungumming it as fast as we can.
I want to get to something that this sort of touches on, and maybe a bigger ethos that's taking shape, taking root in terms of policy push within the State Department, and that is sort of the role of American business in foreign policy and in diplomacy. You touched on it a little bit, and I just want to dig a little deeper into how you're thinking about that.
It is the top of mind every day for me. My father was a career Foreign Service officer, and he started out his career as commercial attaché at the embassy in Montevideo. Until his dying day, he said a good ambassador is first and foremost a good commercial attaché. That good commercial economic relationships are the basis for good bilateral relations between countries. And so that really is kind of my North Star. And when you look around the world at our competition with China, that is primarily an economic competition. And the Chinese have been eating our lunch, not because they've been better than us in terms of presenting the projects, is because American business isn't even there in most of these places. And my challenge as Deputy Secretary of State, my biggest thing that I focus on is how do we at the State Department provide the connective tissue between the dynamic American private sector, probably the most dynamic force in the world, on the one hand, and all kinds of opportunities around the world. How do we make sure that the private sector, why isn't the American private sector showing up in all these places, building a railroad in this place in Africa or a port in Latin America? I think that there's a lot of answers to that. I'm still trying to learn the answers to that, but I think maybe we overassess risk, and there's ways we can deal with that. I am the chairman of the board of the Development Finance Corporation as well as the Millennium Challenge Corporation. So I think I'm uniquely positioned to play an active role in this. But again, this is what we want to do. We want to encourage the American private sector. Please, you want to have the highest risk-adjusted rate of return for your investors. That's the way it should be. But work with us to look at opportunities in different places around the world that may not be traditional, but that may actually give you great rates of return.
How do trade deals open the door to that dynamic? And I guess perhaps if we bring this back to full circle where we started, which was AI, how are you thinking about this notion of diffusion, which China's been very strong with, but it seems like there's an opportunity for the U.S. to counter, whether it is in AI or whether it is other types of technologies and capabilities moving forward?
Well, I think trade deals are going to be critical to opening new markets and making sure that we remove non-tariff barriers that have been, a problem for U.S. businesses. I think President Trump is sick and tired of having other countries have access to this incredible market, the American consumer, without reciprocal access. And again, I think AI, we're taking another hard look. I think we're taking a very different approach than the Biden administration on most things, and on AI diffusion in particular, to make sure that people are using AI, working with American apps and working on American platforms, so that we become the baseline for this new technological revolution that we're just in the early stages of right now.
But it begins and ends with what I call compute power. Right? If you don't have energy to supply to the data centers, you can't win the AI race. So today, data centers consume about 2% of the US's electricity, and we expect that to grow to as much as 15% over the next decade. What needs to happen for that to evolve to that point so that we can actually improve diffusion is we need more infrastructure as quickly as we possibly can, and we definitely have an administration that is open to helping remove roadblocks for us.
All right. We are out of time. Gentlemen, thank you so much for this discussion.
This was great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.